Amara tightened the thin blanket around Lyra, her small daughter shivering under the cold hum of the life support unit in their cramped module. The wind outside Zephyra 7's dome rattled the walls, carrying the bitter chill of the mining planet's endless storms. Amara had learned long ago that the planet did not forgive weakness. Every moment of inattention could mean illness, frostbite, or worse. And now, with the last of the expired rations sitting in the corner, she felt the weight of despair pressing on her chest. Lyra's small face was pale, and her breathing came in shallow, uneven bursts. "Mama, my stomach hurts," she whispered, her voice fragile like glass. Amara's heart clenched. She had seen this before, the result of the spoiled food the corporation sent. Zephyra 7 was a remote colony, far from the corporate centers, and supply shipments were infrequent. When they did arrive, the packages often contained rations that had gone bad weeks ago, their expiration dates ignored or forgotten. Amara knelt beside her daughter, placing a gentle hand on her forehead. It was hotter than usual. "It's okay, Lyra. Mama will fix this," she said, though her own voice carried the uncertainty she tried to hide. She had no cure for spoiled food, only experience in nursing her daughter through the pain until the storm passed, both outside and inside her daughter's body. She could only hope it would be enough this time. The module was silent except for the hum of machinery. Outside, the storm battered the protective dome, the walls shivering with each gust. Amara's eyes swept across the tiny room, a thin bunk, a small counter with the last of the rations, and a dusty window that barely let the dim light from Zephyra 7's twin suns through. Life here was minimal, survival the daily routine. She often thought about how fragile human life was in such an environment, yet somehow people endured. Somehow they found hope even in the smallest gestures, a warm meal, a shared smile, a story at night under the flickering light of the module. She remembered the first time she had arrived on this planet. Zephyra 7 had seemed full of possibility then, a chance to carve a future in the untouched lands of the outer colonies. But dreams often collided with reality, and the reality was stark. The corporation running the supply lines cared more about profits than people. The miners and settlers were expendable, their needs secondary to the quotas and output demanded from the mining shafts below the surface. Amara had seen too many families weakened, broken, or lost to the harsh conditions. The door hissed as it cycled open for a brief moment, letting in a sharp gust. Amara jumped, clutching Lyra closer. A shadow passed the doorway, a neighbor, old Marak, carrying a crate. "Amara," he said, his voice roughened by the wind. "I brought what I could find. Supplies are low, and these are near the end, but maybe they'll help." Amara managed a tired smile. "Thank you, Marek. Any help is a gift here." She took the crate and set it down. Inside, the rations were stale, and smell of ammonia hinted that some had passed expiration weeks ago. She knew Lyra could not eat all of it. She had to ration, stretch, make it last. But even that was dangerous. Too much of spoiled food could make the child sicker. As Marek left, the door sealing with another hiss, Amara sat with Lyra in her arms. She whispered stories, hoping to distract her daughter from the pain. She told her about planets beyond Zephyra 7, places with skies of colors humans had never seen, and oceans where creatures swam like moving jewels. Lyra's eyes, dimmed by sickness, sparkled faintly as she imagined those worlds. Amara held her close, a shield against despair, a beacon of hope. Night fell, though on Zephyra 7 the concept of day and night was more about the rotation of the twin suns than anything else. The storm outside continued to rage, and the module's thin walls barely held the wind at bay. Amara checked the air recycler and water supply. Both were functioning, barely, as if the planet itself were testing their endurance. She had to keep moving, keep acting. A mother could not allow herself to collapse into worry. Lyra needed her. Hours passed slowly. Lyra's fever climbed, and Amara applied damp cloths to her small body, praying for relief. Her mind wandered, searching for solutions. She had no medicine left, no doctor to call, no one nearby who could help beyond what she could provide. The corporate representatives had long abandoned this module. She thought about leaving the colony, but it was impossible. Outside the dome, Zephyra 7's storms could shred a human in minutes. The only hope was survival within the fragile walls of the settlement. Then a faint sound reached her ears, a low hum, almost musical, unlike anything she had heard before on the planet. It was outside the dome, subtle but persistent. Amara froze, listening. The wind seemed to carry it, bending around the dome like it wanted to enter. Lyra stirred slightly but did not wake. The sound grew, not frightening, but intriguing. Amara felt a flicker of curiosity. Perhaps it was a device or a vehicle passing in the storm. Perhaps it was something more. By morning, the storm had eased, leaving behind a sky of pale orange light. Amara ventured outside the module, careful of the residual wind. The settlement was quiet. Many were still inside their own shelters, recovering from the night's fury. The hum persisted, now faint but noticeable, coming from the central plaza of the small colony. She wrapped Lyra in a warm blanket, placed her in a makeshift carrier, and began the short, cautious walk toward the sound. At the center of the plaza stood a figure unlike any she had seen on Zephyra 7. A human, yet unlike the miners or settlers she knew. His uniform shimmered slightly in the weak sunlight, and a small device hovered near his shoulder, moving with precise intelligence. The hum came from him, or perhaps the device. People had gathered around, whispering, skeptical and cautious. "Who is he?" a voice muttered behind her. Amara glanced to see a group of neighbors, all keeping a wary distance. She shook her head. "I don't know," she said. But curiosity burned in her chest. Desperation, too. Maybe he could help. Maybe he was the answer she had been praying for through the long, cold night. The stranger's eyes scanned the crowd, and then, as if noticing her and Lyra, he smiled gently. "I'm Kyle," he said, voice calm, carrying a warmth that seemed to push back against the harshness of Zephyra 7. "I've come to help," people murmured, some with suspicion. Amara stepped forward, holding Lyra closer. "Help? How can you help? Our supplies are spoiled. We barely survive," she said, her voice firm despite the fear within her. Kale's smile did not falter. He held up his hands, palms outward. "Sometimes the smallest changes can make the largest difference. I can make what is unusable usable again." Skepticism rippled through the crowd. Amara, however, felt a spark of hope she hadn't dared feel in months. Could this stranger truly help? Could he take the spoiled rations, the illness, the despair, and change it all? She looked down at Lyra, whose small eyes followed Kale, curiosity mingled with tiredness. "Show me," Amara said. Her voice was steady. Behind it was a trembling layer of hope, fragile as glass but present. Kyle nodded and gestured toward the crates of spoiled rations. As he approached, the device on his shoulder emitted a soft, bluish light, bathing the food in a warm glow. Slowly, deliberately, the color of the rations shifted. The staleness faded. The smell changed from bitter and sour to earthy and fresh. Amara gasped. Could it be real? She reached forward cautiously, touching one of the rations. It felt right, fresh, safe. She lifted it to her nose and inhaled. Relief washed over her in a wave she had not felt in weeks. Lyra stirred, sensing the change. "See?" Kale said softly. "Even small steps can save lives." Amara's eyes filled with tears. She could barely speak. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. For the first time in months, the weight of despair eased, replaced by cautious hope. As Kale continued to demonstrate his abilities, Amara realized that survival on Zephyra 7 no longer had to be a daily fight against death. Perhaps, with the right guidance and courage, the colony could thrive. Perhaps she and Lyra could finally look toward the stars, not with longing, but with the belief that a future existed beyond the cold, harsh storms. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the plaza, but Amara felt warmth that had nothing to do with light. Change had arrived in the form of a single human willing to act when others could not. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. The morning after Kale's arrival, the settlement on Zephyra 7 was buzzing with cautious curiosity. Word had spread quickly. A human capable of changing spoiled food into fresh, nutritious meals had appeared. For a colony accustomed to daily hardship, this was nearly impossible to believe. Yet the evidence was there, undeniable and tangible. Amara and Lyra, now more hopeful than they had been in months, moved carefully through the central plaza, where settlers gathered around Kyle and the glowing device that hovered at his shoulder. Kale was already at work, his hands moving over crates, his device emitting a soft hum. The settlers watched silently. Some muttered skeptically to one another, but the transformation was clear. Stale, hardened rations became fresh, full of color and nourishment. Containers of water, previously cloudy and bitter, cleared instantly and smelled clean, safe to drink. Amara's eyes widened as she stepped forward with Lyra, clutching the child's hand. This was real. Kyle had not just promised, he had delivered. Can it save everyone? A miner asked, voice filled with doubt but tinged with hope. He had seen many promises fail, many attempts end in disappointment. Kale's gaze met his, steady and calm. Yes, Kale said simply. But it is not only my doing. Change takes effort. It is not just what I can do, but what people are willing to do together. His voice carried warmth and authority, not demanding but encouraging. Amara felt a surge of determination. She understood. If Kale could provide the tools, she and others had to act to maintain them, to sustain life in the settlement. Amara approached Kale. I want to help, she said. Lyra and we want to do what we can. Kyle smiled gently and nodded. Good. Then we begin together. The day passed in a blur of action and discovery. Amara and a handful of volunteers gathered the worst of the expired rations and carried them to Kale. Under his guidance, the rations were purified and stabilized. He demonstrated subtle techniques that adjusted the chemical structure of the food, neutralizing harmful bacteria without altering taste or nutrition. For the first time in months, the settlers ate without fear. Lyra's eyes brightened as she took her first bite of real, safe food in weeks. Her cheeks regained a hint of color, her small hands shook less, and she laughed, a sound that warmed Amara's heart like sunlight on frozen metal. Yet Kale's influence extended beyond food. He studied the colony's water supply and energy network. He identified weak links in the pipes and generators, showing settlers how to reinforce them and prevent frequent failures. He did not do the work alone. He taught, guided, and encouraged. The colonists, who had grown used to passively waiting for supplies, were learning to actively protect their survival. Amara watched in quiet awe as people began to hope for the first time in a long while, understanding that human ingenuity could overcome even the harshest conditions. As the sun dipped behind Zephyra 7's jagged horizon, Kale gathered the settlers for a demonstration unlike anything they had imagined. Using a small device, he purified the remaining stock of rations for the settlement in minutes, work that had taken months to accomplish under normal circumstances. The transformation was almost magical. Containers that had been unusable became vibrant and nourishing. Water tanks overflowed with clean, safe water. Even the small hydroponic gardens in some modules seemed to respond to Kale's presence, leaves growing brighter, more alive. The settlers stared, speechless, yet deeply inspired. Amara held Lyra close as she watched. She understood the significance of what they were witnessing. Kale was not just a problem solver. He was a catalyst. With guidance and effort, their settlement could become self-sufficient. They could finally survive, thrive even, in a place that had seemed merciless. Her heart swelled with hope, but she also felt the responsibility weighing on her. The work could not be done by Kale alone. She and the settlers had to continue what he had started. Night arrived, and for the first time in a long while, the module felt warm and safe. Lyra slept soundly, a faint smile on her face. Amara remained awake, sitting by the window, watching the twin suns' light fade behind the jagged horizon. Her thoughts wandered to the larger galaxy, imagining other settlements suffering in silence, far from the attention of corporations or saviors. If Kale could do this here, perhaps he could help others, and perhaps humans could learn from him. Learn to take action, to protect one another, to change impossible situations with knowledge and courage. The next morning brought further discoveries. Kyle gathered a small group, including Amara, and led them to the settlement's storage hub. Here, containers of medical supplies were scarce, often expired, or damaged during transport. Kyle approached the crates, his device hovering near them, and within minutes, every vial, every package was stabilized. The settlers watched in amazement as items that had seemed useless became functional and safe. Kale explained carefully, "Tools are only as valuable as those who can use them. Knowledge turns potential into reality." Amara nodded, understanding. This was more than technology. It was empowerment. Kale was showing them how humans, even in the harshest environments, could create change. They were not victims of circumstance. They were capable of action. She realized then that she had to teach others what she learned, starting with the women and young girls who often remained in the modules. They too could become protectors of their community, innovators in a world that had offered them little hope. Over the following days, Kyle worked tirelessly with the settlers. The colony began to transform. Expired food was no longer a threat. Water and energy systems stabilized. Small gardens flourished. Children played without fear of illness. The settlers started working together, learning to repair equipment, manage resources, and sustain themselves. Amara found herself teaching alongside Kale, explaining to neighbors how to monitor the quality of food, the condition of pipes, and the health of crops. Her voice carried authority born of experience and compassion, and the settlers listened. One evening, as the settlement gathered in the central plaza, Kyle addressed them. "What we have done here is only the beginning," he said. "Humanity is capable of surviving, thriving, and creating. No storm, no shortage. No challenge is beyond your ability to overcome if you act with courage and knowledge." The settlers listened in silence, absorbing the meaning of his words. For the first time, they truly believed it. Lyra, sitting on Amara's lap, looked up at Kyle with wide eyes. "Can we really change everything?" she asked, voice small but filled with hope. Kale knelt beside her, smiling. "Yes, Lyra. Change is always possible. One person, one action, can grow into something greater when others join. That is the power of humanity." Amara felt tears rise to her eyes. She looked around at her neighbors, miners, engineers, mothers, children, all observing, learning, believing. Kyle had not simply solved their immediate problems, he had inspired them. He had shown that human determination, knowledge, and cooperation could reshape even the harshest realities. Days turned into weeks. The settlement on Zephyra 7 continued to improve under Kale's guidance and the settlers' dedication. Broken generators were repaired. Hydroponic farms expanded. Expired food became a memory. People began to smile again, laugh even, and share stories at night under the soft hum of the life support units. Amara and Lyra thrived. Their health restored, their spirits lifted. Yet Kale knew their journey was only beginning. The colony had potential far beyond survival. There were ways to improve efficiency, grow new crops, develop sustainable energy sources, and more than that, Kale hoped to teach the settlers a lesson that would last far longer than his presence, that humans, when willing to act and cooperate, could change their fate, even against impossible odds. Amara watched him work, admiration and gratitude mixing with determination. She realized that Kale's greatest gift was not the technology he carried, but the belief he instilled, the understanding that humans were not powerless. With effort, courage, and knowledge, even the most dire circumstances could be transformed. That evening, as Lyra slept peacefully, Amara looked out at the settlement, now glowing with lights that reflected hope and life. The storms outside Zephyra 7 still raged, but inside the colony was warm, alive, and growing. Amara understood that the future was no longer dictated solely by circumstance or corporations. It was theirs to shape, one thoughtful, deliberate action at a time. And in that moment, Amara knew that change had truly arrived, not just in the food, the water, or the energy systems, but in the hearts and minds of the people who called Zephyra 7 home. A single human, with vision and courage, had shown them the path, and the settlers were ready to follow. Weeks passed on Zephyra 7, and the settlement began to change in ways no one had thought possible. What had once been a place of despair, where families scavenged for survival amid storms and spoiled rations, was now alive with activity. Children laughed as they ran through narrow paths between modules, miners repaired and improved their tools, and gardens of bright green vegetables and flowers stretched across the settlement. Every day, Amara and Lyra witnessed how a single person's vision, Kyle's, could inspire an entire community to act. Amara had taken on a leadership role alongside Kale, teaching settlers how to care for their food, or water and energy systems. She organized small teams, pairing experienced miners with women and young adults who had never ventured into the mechanical or agricultural work before. They learned quickly, guided by Kale's knowledge and her own determination. Every success, no matter how small, strengthened their confidence. One morning, Amara walked through the central plaza with Lyra, who had grown strong and lively after weeks of proper nourishment. She smiled at the sight of settlers working together. People carried tools, tended to gardens, and repaired damaged solar panels. Even the children were learning, helping transport small supplies, gathering fallen debris, and caring for the youngest among them. The sight warmed Amara's heart. Kyle stood at the edge of the plaza, overseeing the work. His presence was calm and steady, like a guiding star. He noticed Amara and waved her over. "How are you?" he asked gently. Amara smiled. "Better. Lyra is thriving, and the colony, it feels alive again." She gestured to the settlers bustling around. "You've shown us that we can do more than survive. We can actually grow, live, and help each other." Kyle nodded. "That is the power of humanity. One person can make a difference, but together, you can achieve far more than you imagine. This planet is harsh, but it will not stop you if you act with courage and knowledge." Amara felt the weight of his words, understanding that this lesson was more important than the technology or the devices he carried. Humans had the ability to change their own fate. She thought of Lyra and every child who would grow up on this planet. They deserved not only survival, but the chance to dream, to create, to explore. The next challenge arose when a sudden storm struck the settlement. Sci-Fi 7's weather was unpredictable, and violent storms could arise without warning. Winds howled, tearing at the domes and shaking the fragile structures. Amara and Kyle quickly organized emergency teams. The settlers worked together, reinforcing weak modules, securing supplies, and guiding children and the elderly to safe areas. The storm was harsh, but the settlement no longer resembled the fragile place it had been weeks ago. Amara helped carry supplies through the wind, her muscles straining but her mind focused. She saw settlers braving the storm to protect one another, their courage inspiring her further. When Lyra clung to her side, Amara held her close. "You're safe now, little one," she whispered. "We're stronger than the storm." By the time the storm subsided, the settlement had suffered minor damage, but nothing catastrophic. Every person had survived, and the sense of pride and accomplishment was tangible. Settlers gathered in the central plaza, sharing stories of bravery and teamwork. Kyle smiled at the sight, knowing that these experiences were forging not only survival skills, but a lasting sense of community and human resilience. As the days passed, the settlement's transformation continued. Hydroponic farms expanded, producing more food than anyone had expected. Waste systems were improved, allowing for recycling and reducing the strain on limited supplies. Amara taught groups of settlers to monitor nutrient levels in the water, check for contamination, and maintain healthy crops. Lyra often joined her, learning with remarkable enthusiasm. She loved to see the plants grow, fascinated by how humans could coax life from barren soil. One afternoon, Amara and Kale walked through the settlement's newly established learning center. It was a simple structure, with tables, benches, and shelves containing books and notes about science, agriculture, and survival techniques. Settlers of all ages were gathered inside, eager to learn. Kale demonstrated how to use the energy stabilizers, while Amara explained how to check food for signs of spoilage and how to purify water using safe techniques. A young girl raised her hand. "Will this really work if we are alone? If something goes wrong?" Amara smiled. "Yes, the knowledge you gain is yours to use. Even without Kale or me, you can keep the settlement safe. That is the power of learning and cooperation." The girl nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. Lyra watched quietly from the corner, absorbing every detail. Amara placed a hand on her shoulder. "We are all teachers and learners here," she whispered. "Together we are stronger." The transformation was not limited to technology and knowledge. Something deeper was changing in the settlers themselves. Hope replaced fear. Confidence replaced despair. People began to care for one another in ways they had never dared before, sharing responsibilities, watching out for neighbors, and celebrating achievements. Sci-Fi 7's harsh environment no longer seemed like an insurmountable enemy. It became a challenge to overcome, a test of ingenuity and resilience. One evening, Amara watched the sunset from the edge of the settlement, Lyra by her side. The twin suns dipped behind jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the domes and farms. Amara reflected on how far they had come. The settlement was no longer a place of fear and hunger, but a community filled with life, learning, and hope. Kale approached silently, standing beside her. "You have done well," he said. "This settlement is alive because of your guidance and your willingness to act. Humans have always had the power to shape their world, but it takes courage to do so." Amara nodded. "We are learning. Lyra is learning. Everyone here is learning. But it is more than survival now. We want to grow, to explore, to thrive." Kale smiled. "Exactly. That is what makes humanity extraordinary. You do not accept limits. You seek solutions, find ways, and inspire one another." That is what changes worlds. The following days brought new opportunities. Kale guided the settlers in expanding their resource collection systems. Solar panels were optimized to collect more energy, while small wind turbines provided additional power. Water recycling units were repaired and enhanced. Food production increased as gardens grew more extensive and efficient. The settlers learned to maintain these systems themselves, ensuring that even if Kale were to leave, their progress would not be lost. Amara's role became central. She organized teams, assigned responsibilities, and monitored progress. She encouraged the settlers to think critically and act decisively. Each success, each lesson learned, strengthened the colony's independence. Lyra often accompanied her mother, learning practical skills and developing a sense of responsibility. She loved helping in the gardens, checking nutrient levels, and understanding how each small action contributed to the well-being of the entire community. One day, Kale gathered the settlement for a new demonstration. He had devised a method to improve food storage, preventing spoilage even in the harsh conditions of Zephyra 7. Settlers watched in awe as containers of food were enhanced to last weeks longer than before without losing nutritional value or taste. Amara realized the significance. No longer would the colony fear shortages. They had learned to survive, and now they were learning to thrive. Amara looked at the faces of the settlers, men, women, and children, all filled with determination and pride. She understood then that Kale's greatest gift was not just the ability to change materials or technology, but the ability to inspire human action and creativity. The settlement's progress was proof that humans could adapt, improve, and create solutions even in the harshest environments. At night, Amara tucked Lyra into bed and watched her daughter sleep, smiling softly. Lyra had grown strong, healthy, and curious about the world. She often asked questions about planets beyond Zephyra 7, about stars, and about the future. Amara knew that with the lessons they had learned and the guidance they had received, Lyra's dreams could one day become reality. The settlement had become more than a place to survive. It was a community, a school, and a laboratory for human ingenuity. Amara felt proud of what they had achieved together. She understood that the power to change, to improve, and to grow rested not only in Kale, but in every human willing to act. Each person in the settlement had the potential to shape the world around them. As Kale prepared for his next journey, helping other struggling colonies across the galaxy, he gathered Amara and the leaders of the settlement. "Remember," he said, "the future is not set. You have the knowledge, the tools, and the courage to create it. Protect this settlement, teach others, and continue to act with care, courage, and cooperation. That is the true power of humanity." Amara felt the truth of his words. She would continue Kale's work, guiding the settlement and inspiring others. She would teach Lyra, who would teach the next generation, ensuring that Zephyra 7's story was not one of despair, but of human triumph. And as Kale departed, the settlers watched him leave, their hearts filled with gratitude and determination. The colony on Zephyra 7 had been transformed, not by magic or luck, but by knowledge, action, and the courage to believe in themselves. Amara turned to Lyra, who clung to her hand. "Do you see, little one?" she whispered. "We are not powerless. We can change our world, one step at a time." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "I want to help, Mama. I want to make things better." Amara smiled, holding her daughter close. Together they looked out at the settlement, alive with light, laughter, and life. Zephyra 7 was no longer a place of despair. It was a place of possibility, of hope, and of human achievement. And in that moment, Amara understood something profound. Humans were not defined by the limits imposed on them, but by the actions they took, the knowledge they gained, and the courage they displayed. One person could change things, yes, but together, humans could change anything. The weeks following Kale's departure were filled with new energy and determination in the Zephyra 7 settlement. Amara had fully embraced her role as a leader and teacher, guiding settlers in maintaining the systems Kale had introduced and encouraging them to explore improvements of their own. Every day brought progress, and every night brought reflection on what they had achieved together. The settlement no longer resembled the fragile colony it had once been. Solar panels gleamed in the twin suns' light, and the hydroponic gardens stretched wider, producing a variety of vegetables and fruits that had once seemed impossible to grow on this harsh planet. Water tanks were filled with crystal-clear water, purified and monitored by settlers trained by Amara. The hum of machinery was steady, reliable, and no longer a source of fear. People moved through the settlement with purpose, confident in their ability to maintain and improve their environment. Lyra, now stronger and more confident, often accompanied her mother in her work. She helped monitor the crops, learning how to test soil nutrients and identify signs of plant stress. The young girl's curiosity was insatiable, and her questions often sparked deeper discussions among the settlers. "Mama, why does the plant need sunlight and water together?" she asked one afternoon, crouching beside a row of bright green lettuce. Amara smiled. "The plant needs sunlight to make food and energy from water. Each part of the process helps it grow. Just like people, we need many things working together to be strong." Lyra's eyes brightened as she absorbed the lesson. "So, we are like plants?" she asked. "Yes," Amara replied gently. "Together, with care, knowledge, and effort, we can grow strong and thrive, even in hard places." One day, while inspecting the energy systems, Amara noticed a small group of settlers huddled near the outer modules. Curious, she approached and saw that they were designing a network of small wind turbines to supplement the solar panels. Inspired by Kale's teachings, the settlers had begun experimenting and improving on what they had learned. Amara's heart swelled with pride. They were no longer passive recipients of help. They were innovators, thinking beyond survival. "May I help?" Lyra asked eagerly, stepping forward. Amara knelt beside her daughter. "Of course. You can help us think of new ways to use energy. Every idea counts." Lyra nodded seriously, touching the small turbine model with careful fingers, her imagination already running ahead to larger designs. As the settlement grew stronger, the settlers began exploring ways to communicate with nearby colonies. Many settlements in the outer planets struggled like Zephyra 7 had, trapped by distance, harsh environments, and unreliable supplies. Using salvaged communication equipment and Kyle's guidance notes, the settlers began building a network to share knowledge, resources, and warnings of storms or other dangers. The realization that they could help others filled the community with purpose. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the mountains, Amara gathered the settlers in the central plaza. "We have learned to survive, and now we are learning to thrive," she said. "But our work is not only for ourselves. There are others who need help. We can share what we know, guide them, and make more lives better." The settlers nodded, their faces reflecting determination and hope. Lyra tugged at her mother's hand. "Mama, can we really help them too?" Amara smiled. "Yes, Lyra. One day, you will help too. Everyone can make a difference." The following weeks were filled with coordinated efforts to extend the settlement's capabilities. Settlers experimented with improved water filtration methods, renewable energy combinations, and larger hydroponic systems. Amara trained teams to manage these innovations, ensuring that each step was carefully monitored and sustainable. The community became self-sufficient, resilient, and increasingly confident in their ability to face the challenges of Zephyra 7's harsh environment. The settlement's transformation drew attention from other nearby colonies, Delegations arrived, curious about the progress and eager to learn from the settlers' experience. Amara welcomed them, guiding them through the modules, gardens, and energy systems. She explained the principles Kale had taught and how human determination, knowledge, and cooperation had made the difference. Settlers proudly demonstrated their new skills, showing visitors that survival was not just about enduring hardships. It was about learning, adapting, and working together. Amara felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Zephira 7 was no longer just a place of struggle. It had become a model of human potential. She watched Lyra talk with visiting children, showing them how to care for small plants and explaining how the water system worked. The young girl's excitement and curiosity were infectious, reminding Amara of why she had worked so hard to protect and teach her. One night after the visitors had left, Amara sat outside the module with Lyra, watching the stars. The twin suns had set, and the sky was filled with a dazzling array of colors, the glow of distant planets and nebulae visible in the thin atmosphere. Lyra pointed excitedly. "Mama, look! Can humans really travel there?" Amara smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lyra's face. "One day, yes. Humans will reach those stars, and just like here, they will bring knowledge, courage, and hope wherever they go." Lyra hugged her mother tightly. "I want to help people everywhere." "You will," Amara whispered. "Because you understand what we've learned, that humans can change things, not by waiting or hoping, but by acting, learning, and helping each other." Days turned into weeks, and the settlement continued to grow. New structures were built, larger hydroponic farms flourished, and energy production became more efficient than ever. Settlers experimented with sustainable housing, designing better insulation against the storms, and creating communal areas for learning, recreation, and celebration. Every achievement strengthened the community's sense of pride and self-reliance. Amara often reflected on Kale's words, that the future was not set, and that humans had the power to shape their world. She realized that Zephira 7 was a small example of a much larger truth. Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to act with knowledge, courage, and cooperation. Every problem could be solved, every obstacle overcome, if humans were willing to work together and apply their creativity. One afternoon, Lyra approached Amara with a small notebook. "Mama, I've been drawing ideas for new gardens and energy systems," she said, eyes bright. "I want to show everyone how to make life even better." Amara knelt beside her daughter, looking at the detailed sketches. "These are wonderful, Lyra. You are thinking like a leader and innovator. One day, these ideas could help not just our settlement, but many others." The two of them shared a quiet moment, understanding that the lessons of survival, courage, and creativity would continue to guide them. Lyra's curiosity and energy were a reminder of what they had fought for, not just survival, but a future filled with possibility. As the settlement thrived, Amara realized that Zephira 7 had become more than a colony. It was a testament to human potential. Through courage, determination, and collaboration, the settlers had transformed their world. They had taken what seemed impossible, survival in a harsh, distant planet, and turned it into opportunity, growth, and hope. Amara often thought of Kale, who had shown them the path. He had come not just to change food, water, or energy, but to ignite a spark of human ingenuity and courage. That spark had grown into a flame, illuminating the settlement and inspiring every settler to act, to learn, and to improve their world. One night, as she walked through the glowing settlement, Amara paused to watch the settlers working together on a new hydroponic project. Children helped carry small plants, miners adjusted irrigation systems, and women monitored energy use. Lyra ran ahead, excited to show a neighbor her new ideas. Amara's heart swelled with pride. The settlement had become a living, breathing proof that humans could overcome any obstacle through cooperation, knowledge, and determination. Amara realized that Zephyrus 7 was only the beginning. The knowledge, experience, and courage they had gained could spread to other settlements across the galaxy. One human, Kale, had shown them the way, but it was now up to every person in the settlement to continue, to teach, and to inspire others. The potential of humanity was limitless. As the twin suns rose over Zephyrus 7 the next morning, Amara and Lyra stood on a small hill overlooking the settlement. The domes, gardens, and solar arrays stretched out before them, a vibrant symbol of human achievement. Amara held Lyra close and pointed toward the horizon. "See those stars, Lyra?" she said. "Humans will go there one day, and wherever they go, they will bring knowledge, courage, and hope, just like we have here." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. "I want to help, Mama. I want to change the world." "You will, my little one," Amara said, smiling, "because you have learned that humans can change anything if they act, if they learn, and if they work together." And so, life on Zephyrus 7 continued. The colony thrived, no longer defined by scarcity or fear, but by human ingenuity, cooperation, and the belief that they could shape their own future. Amara and Lyra, like every settler, knew that the universe was vast and challenging, but filled with opportunities for those willing to act. They were not merely surviving. They were living, learning, and preparing to reach farther than they had ever dreamed. The settlement, once fragile and hopeless, had become a shining example of humanity's potential. Through courage, knowledge, and collaboration, humans had turned a harsh, distant planet into a home filled with life, hope, and endless possibility. And as Amara and Lyra gazed at the stars above, they understood something profound. One human could change a moment, but together, humans could change worlds.